Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and today we are back in our Cessna Citation Longitude. We're going to be taking longitude from Key West over to Princess Juliana in the Caribbean. Be a fun little flight. Thought it'd be kind of exciting to try that Princess Juliana approach again, so figured why not bring you guys along. So stay tuned folks, and let's get this show rolling. If you are interested in acquiring my Overkill's Cessna Citation Longitude guide from Microsoft Flight Simulator, consider joining my Patreon site at level tier 2 or above. That's $10 or more, which will give you access to all of the Overkill tutorial guides. Please keep in mind with Patreon, you do not have to subscribe each and every month. Once you subscribe, you will be charged $10. You will have access to all of the guides, and if you wish, you can then cancel the subscription, and you will maintain access to Patreon until the first of the following month. So, with that in mind, let's talk about what this guide is. This guide gives you a full flight tutorial from Boston to Minneapolis. It also walks you through installing any modifications that I use for this aircraft, a full cockpit tutorial, breaking down how to create your flight plan using SimBrief, which is a free service, and then completing the flight successfully. If there are any questions, you're always welcome to give feedback, as joining my Patreon site gives you access to my Discord channel as well, giving you direct access and communication to me. So once again, if you guys are interested, please consider joining the Patreon. It definitely helps support the channel and keeps the content coming, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Alright, so first thing we need to do, as always, is get the aircraft fueled and loaded according to our flight plan. I've already got the flight plan created in the SimBrief, so now it's just a matter of setting everything up. So we're looking at 83.33 today on the fuel pounds, so just about there. Let's go ahead and load her up a bit more. We'll take the extra fuel. I don't feel like dialing it in to perfection. Center of gravity looks good, so I'll leave the payload as is. I'm not too concerned about that portion here either. Well, what the hell? Let's just see what we've got. Total payload today, looking for 2.6, so alright, we'll increase it. Close enough. Alrighty. CG and Max still look good. Let's get her started up. Alright, so let's see if I can remember any of these hotkeys first. First, do a quick cycle here. Alright, so we have our flaps are retracted, parking brake is set, speed brakes are retracted as well, throttles are at idle. Let's see, any other concerns? Oh, yeah, okay, so that's just for the tray. Okay, we're good to go. No concerns. Let's get rolling. Alright, so with our weights and balances set, let's go ahead and take a quick cruise through the cockpit for a second. Spoilers are retracted and disarmed. We have throttles over at idle, parking brake is set, flaps are retracted as well. Alright, area is clear, so we should be good for engine start. We're going to go straight into the APU. We're not going to be using external power today, so it'll make things a bit easier and faster to get along with. So let's jump right into it. First thing we want is our standby battery switch turned on here. Then we're going to do batteries 1 and 2. Remember, we do want the circuit to be closed while we are operating on APU, as APU only powers one bus. But once we get the generators turned on, we'll want all blues before we taxi away. Alright, so oxygen system we're going to simulate as checked and verified. Hydraulics data checked and verified. We would find that also on the CAS information as well as the flight control settings. But unfortunately, a lot of it is not modeled. But we'll work with what we've got, right? Okay, so let's come on down and get our APU started up. We're going to come right down here, flip this little girl onto the start position, and then bring it forward. While that's coming up, let's see if I've got what I have available here. There we go. We're watching the APU and we're looking for 100%. Once we get 100%, we'll do an APU Gen reset and then flip the Gen to on. There we go. All right, so, oops, we wanted to come down. So reset, there we go, and now to the on position. All right, so APU Gen is on. External power is disconnected. Cockpit controls, we've already checked set and free. Trims will set after we get everything else ready to roll here, and we'll get to that in a second here. All right, and so now let's go ahead and take a look at entering in our flight plan while we have the APU running here. So, coming over to our FMS. All right, so getting our flight plan entered into the computer couldn't be easier. We're just going to go to flight plan here, tell it where we currently are, and we're currently sitting at Key West. We're going to tell it where we're going. Tango, November, Charlie, Mike, Princess Juliana. I love this airport. All right, and now let's talk about the route today. So if I take a look at SimBrief here, we're flying pretty much direct. We got a couple of airways, but nothing too crazy here. So let's see what we've got going on. All right, so we're going to be going. Let's see if I can at least enter in our runway. Yep, okay, just says all. Want to make sure there wasn't a way to set the actual runway, but doesn't look like it, so no worries there. So now let's just start adding some waypoints. So first we're going direct to Karna. So Charlie Alpha Romeo November uniform. And to make things easy, we're just going to add in our next one as it is another direct. So we're going to delimitate them with an asterisk. So boom, there's an asterisk again. And you can see our previous one here, and it's already loaded up on the MFD. So we just start typing away again. Mike Tango Hotel is the next location. And again, what do we got from there? Well, from there we're going into a airway. So let's go ahead and just hit enter. And now, let's find Myth. There it is. And we're going to load airway. Myth is the entry point, and we are looking for the Bravo 646. And we will be exiting at FOE. I'm just making some of these names up, so if they are wrong, it's just one of those things that we get to deal with, and you guys get some amusement out of at listening to me try to pronounce these. All right, now from here is the awesome part. We can go load airway and go right into our next one. FOE is the entry point for our next airway, so we're going to go load airway again listed as the entry point, and we're looking for the Yankee 308. There she is, and exiting over at Haggett. So let's find that one. Come on, baby. There we go. And load airway again. And from Haggett, we are jumping on to yet another one. So we're going to go load airway again. And from here, we are coming on the Yankee 290. There she is, waiting for us. And going to Sluggo. Or Slugo. Could be Slugo, Sluggo, Taco Bell. I don't know. Cancel. That's not what I wanted. Come here. Yankee 290. And we're exiting at... I was hoping I could just... Can I just... All right, that'll work. That works too. All right, and load airway. And guess what? We are jumping on to yet another one. From Slugo, we're jumping on to the Alpha 638. There she is. And we are exiting at Kabul. Uh-oh. Oh, wait. Alpha 638, yeah. Exiting at... I don't have that exit point. So it's looking for an exit point that I do not have in our system here. That could be a problem. All right, so what we're going to have to do here... I mean, from there, we're flying direct. So let's see if we can what we can find out when this happens. Now we have to use just our best guess here. But what we're going to use is... All right, so let's find out what we can come up with here. All right, so there's Sluggo right there. Or Slugo. And from here, what are our options? All right. Just a matter of picking the best transition point. Because we're coming in right here. So let's look at the approaches. Approach plate's probably going to tell me what I want to look for. And I believe we're expecting runway 10. Let's see. All right, so there's again. See, so there. Now, wait a minute. Okay, so I want you guys to see what I'm looking at here for a second. Check this out. Because this is where this gets kind of confusing even for me. This is where we all learn, right? So here's our route. So we're taking Slugo right here. You guys can see it. Jumping on to the A638. All right, so that would be coming down where we were. If we go back to the star, we should be able to see it. Even then, it doesn't really show it. So it's not identifying as the alpha, but that's all right. So just follow my lead here for a second, though. And you guys can see where I'm getting confused because this is craziness. So then we have our option to go from Slugo to Gabul, which is right here. So we would come here and then fly direct over here, but that doesn't really make sense. So I'm thinking actually the best way to do this would honestly be to just go direct to TNCM. I almost wonder if we should just skip that airway. You know what? Let's cancel it. Let's go back. So let's just click on this. And I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to make an executive decision, right? This is my plane. So we're going to go Tango, November, Charlie, Mike. Oh, wait. I don't have to enter that. Never mind. Back that up. We already have our destination. See what happened? I got ahead of myself. So I think I'm just going to leave it at that and hit enter. And then now let's go ahead and take a look at the flight plan at least. Should probably do that. Let's zoom this up just a bit so we can see everything. But you know, that's another really weird exit. Why would we come out like that and then go to Myth versus flying directly to Myth? So I think I'm going to shape some things up here a little bit. Now it's probably just the best way to enter it, but that's a backtrack. And the nice thing about simulation is we can make our own flight plan. So I'm actually going to remove this waypoint. And we're just going to come out here like this, go straight to Myth, and then fly. Because that's going to take quite a bit of time off the flight there by doing that. And again, that's the nice thing about simulation. So let's see what we got going on. I don't want to fly completely direct, but that first one just seemed a little weird. We were going pretty far out and then coming back in. Pretty big burn on fuel. All right, so then we got that, and yeah, see, I can live with that. Just a nice straight into TNCM. All right, so bing, bada, boom. Let's move on. All right, so at this point now, let's go ahead and get our performance numbers set up. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to find out what our trim setting is. I have a really neat chart that is included in the tutorial guide that was shown at the very beginning of the video here. So first thing I need to know is what our weight is. Oh, let's go ahead and come up here. We're looking at 34,529. So for our stabilizer trim, we need to be at, oh, sorry, looking at the wrong thing. First I need to know what our MAC is, and then we'll go from there. 27.99, so basically 30%. And we're going to be using flaps 2 and nose down 4.5 degrees is what we're looking at. So you do need to turn the tooltips on in order to see this particular portion. And then I recommend just using your HOTAS if you're mapped or something, your trim hat. And just sort of, come on, there she goes. Hold it down. 3, oh, there we go. And there's 4.5. Now, once you do this portion, you can go ahead and turn those tooltips off if you're like me and find them incredibly obnoxious. Unfortunately, that's our only way in this aircraft at the moment because there isn't any other indication of what the trim setting actually is. But from here, that's pretty much the only part that's concerning there. So let me see if I can remember what buttons. There we go. Let's set our speed bugs. And again, for this, we're going to need to take a look at that weight again. And we are between 33,000 and 36,500 pounds. So we're going to be looking at V1 of 121 knots. We're going to go 121 at V1, 122 at rotate, 131 at V2, and 185 is our maximum takeoff speed. All right, and at this point, we'll just trigger those bugs on. The 185 knots, that's totally up to you guys. I actually typically have found myself lately leaving these off. Now, the landing speed bugs we'll be checking out as we get closer to the approach when we get a more accurate weight measurement. So we're just worried about takeoff for right now. So let's take a peek at what we have here. We have our flight plan complete. We have our trim setting done, and we now have our speed bugs entered. So the performance portions of the aircraft are complete. As far as I'm aware, I get asked this question a lot. As far as I'm aware, at the time of this video, I am not aware of any way to enter in the weights of the aircraft into the FMS. So unless I am missing something, and by all means, guys, please tell me, because that would be a big one. Just let me know here. Anyway, I'll be happy to address that if I am missing something. Okay, so now moving back, let's go ahead and set up our, we're going to simulate that we've gotten our clearance. So we're going to go to audios and radios. We're going to find... Am I going to audio and radio? Oh, geez, right in front of my face. All right, so we're going to simulate that ATC has given us a transponder code of... What's it going to be today, guys? Let's do 5712. And go ahead and press enter there. Transponder. Now, we can go ahead and turn on if we want now, but really we don't need to until we actually start approaching the runway, in which case we'll actually switch directly over to TA only. Now, I know that sounds a little weird, and I'm not sure what the deal is here, because on would just simply mean that our transponder code and location is going to be identified on their radar. Altitude reporting obviously is going to give us our location and current altitude, and then TA is the traffic avoidance and cautionary system. So I'm not sure why. I would assume that TA would have to include all the three or all the fields below it. So we're either going to want altitude reporting or TA, but as we get to the runway, we'll be using TA only. Okay. All right, so that is it, guys, which means now it is time to configure the last of our forward panels, set our departure altitudes, set up our speeds and our speed bugs, make sure the CDI is on the FMS, and then we will get ready for engine start and get this beautiful plane out of here. All right, so at this point, we are ready to start configuring the rest of the aircraft. So I'm going to start out by sort of working my way from left to right here. We're going to turn our flight directors on here. We're going to set our speed over to manual. And the reason why we're using manual over the FMS is because I do not believe the FMS in this current release is honoring the speed settings. So we always want to use manual just to keep control of all that. And then we're going to set our initial speed to 185 knots. Remember that maximum takeoff speed. That's sort of why I don't use the bug, is because I already program it up into the box. Remember, at 185 knots, you need to be wheels up for this aircraft. We're also going to select B on our keyboard just to quickly set the barometric pressure. We're looking at 299.0 here. Sets on both, so you don't have to worry about that. Then we'll set the the current heading. Once we line up with the runway, we'll make sure that the heading bug is aligned, just in case we need to fly the runway heading. And obviously, it's always a good thing to have that aligned and ready to roll. And then finally, our altitude. We're going to set our initial altitude here. Remember, we are right at sea level, so we're going to go up to 12,000 feet as the initial climb speed. Remember, this thing climbs like a bullet, so that is one of the really nice advantages of this aircraft. Today, our cruising altitude, we're going to be going to 41,000 feet, so all the way to the top of the sky, it feels like. It always blows me away to, you know, when you're flying the A320 and the 747 or a 737, depending on what simulator you're flying in. You know, when we're cruising down at 32,000, 33,000, you know, somewhere in those ballpark ranges, and then you're in this little jet and you're going way above everybody else. It's just weird. I mean, it makes sense in a way, but at the same token, you would expect the opposite, right? The big boys to be up above you, but no, I guess not. And I guess it sort of makes sense when you think about it. Even with deep sea submersibles, right? You know, the real tiny itty bitty subs, those are the ones that can go down, you know, 8,000-9,000 feet. At least so they tell us. According to the information that's released to the public. Okay, so we have everything set here. We have our altitude locked in. We have our speeds locked in. And again, we'll address the heading. We have our barometric pressure. And now we're going to come over and make sure that our nav source is set to the FMS. So we are golden there. All right, cockpit setup is complete. So let's get these engines started and get this aircraft out of here. All right, to start the engines today, we obviously first need to come up to the top here. We are going to go beacon light or anti-collision light on. You can turn your wing lights on if you choose, or if you're in night operations, arm those emergency exit lights before boarding any passengers. And then now it's time to do another quick sweep. Make sure your throttles are still at the idle position. And now let's come on down and start these engines up. So starting the engines up is a little weird because it happens very, very quickly. So the proper start is we're going to hit the engine starter here, okay? And then we're going to come up top, and what you're looking for is the N1% to be about 8%. Once it reaches 8%, you're going to come over, you're going to flip the cap, and you're going to actually set the engine to the run operation. All right, but it happens super, super fast, right? So if it's unlikely that I'm going to catch it on the camera, but we're going to try it here in just a second here. So again, we're just double checking everything, and we're going to go to the starter. There we go. N2, sorry, is what I was thinking, not N1. So that is pretty slow. All right, so, and then go to the run operation. Fuel is induced, and now we will sit tight until engine 2 is at idle. All right, so engine 2 is at idle. Let's rinse and repeat for engine 1. So again, left starter, watching the N2. Looking for about 8%. Close enough there. Oh, come on, mouse. And let's induce the fuel. And again, we're just going to rinse and repeat. Wait for engine 1 to be up and running. Now, something I did forget is we also want to make sure before we start that whole process is we did miss I missed the recog lights. So make sure you turn your recog lights on before you actually run through the engine startup. All right. So we now have both engines rocking their way up at idle. So this is where this gets obviously nice and fun. Left engine reset, or left engine gen reset. Left gen then turn to on. Right gen reset and then turn to on. Close that bus tie and turn the APU gen off. Then we're going to come all the way to the back here, put our camera down, and turn the APU off as well. And from here, come up top, we're going to turn our taxi lights on as we are getting ready to get out of here. You can turn the tail floodlight on if you want. Again, this is sort of preference or definitely required for night operations. If the passenger safety and seat belts were illuminated, we would obviously have them on as well. But unfortunately, we don't have access to those. I wish somebody would take this aircraft and do an overhaul like they did with the A320. I feel like for somebody who is significantly smarter than me, it wouldn't take much to do that. And it would be, I think it'd be a fun plane to see as fully modeled. It really is. The more I fly it, the more I like it. All right, so let's just do one last sweep here. All right, throttles are at idle, speed brakes still set, blah, blah, blah. Ground spoilers we will arm before takeoff. We can close the flaps on our start switches. Okay, and flaps we do not set until we are ready for takeoff, just because, again, they ride so low to the ground, we don't want anything kicking up and damaging the flap surface. All right, so we are all configured and ready to get this beautiful lady out of here. So let me set myself up as the pilot here, and we'll get rolling. You're going the wrong way, bud. We're looking for runway 9 today. Let me make sure that it hasn't changed as we've been messing around here. Yep, nope, runway 9. Okay. Dun, 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 like two sharks in the water coming at each other. Oh my gosh, the carnage! What's gonna happen? Oh no! He disappears. I wish I had a cloaking device. That'd be dope. Tell you what, man. They have hurricanes and tropical storms and all kinds of nonsense out of here, but when the weather's pretty, it's pretty. Definitely gets hard to argue with it. Definitely hard to argue with it. Alright, so approaching our runway here. Let's get ready to get out of here. Alright, so first thing, we got a couple things we got to jump on here. We're going to come on down to audio and radio. We're going to go to our transponder, set TA only, get that transponder turned on and ready to go. We're going to come up top and make sure our landing lights are turned on. We can turn the taxi light off. You need to come on down to our flaps. We're going to set flaps 2 for takeoff today. Make sure we arm the spoilers in the event of a rejected takeoff. Set our de-icing systems as desired. Let's see what our temperature is looking like today. Well, we're going to 41,000 feet, so it's going to be cold. Let's just call it what it is. So pitot heat definitely needs to be on. Wing anti-ice, left engine, right engine. We can always turn them off later if we want. Like I said, this thing climbs extremely fast, so we're going to be on top of it before we know it. All right, all blues on deck here, so system is clear and ready to go. We have our lights turned on. Do we have a pulse light we won't worry about till we're airborne? All right. Awesome sauce. So let's start bringing her back out and we'll take the runway. Traffic looks clear. Looks like he was just flying over the runway. I don't think he's actually bringing it in yet. Although we have something down there at the end, and it's on the wrong end of it. Yeah, we got people landing in the wrong direction. Check your runways, folks. Always check your runways when you're in multiplayer. All right. So we are going to now go to engage the autopilot. Okay, and you'll be big indicator there. Or toga, sorry, not autopilot. Now we're going to power up to 50%-ish. Okay. Release the brakes and turn on the auto throttle. And let the plane work her magic. There's V1 coming up. Come on, beautiful. There she goes. Positive rate, gear up. Select our speed. We're going to go immediately up to 250 knots for our airspeed. It can be a little weird to manage all of it at once, but you get used to it. It gets better each time. Okay, and then once you have her more or less locked in, now, going the other way. 20 knots above V2, we should have had our flaps up. So, like I said, some of this takes a minute to get used to. We'll let her continue to speed back up. And we're doing 250 knots restriction because we're under 10,000 feet. We're going to line her up with the flight directors here. Okay. And then we're going to bring on our autopilot. As long as you line it up first, it's not quite a violent jolt when it comes up to time. And we can now activate the nav mode and start taking us towards our flight plan. Not VNav, dork. Nav mode. There we go. It's like, why aren't we turning? Alright, so let's do a quick sweep of the cockpit here, make sure we got everything. So flaps are retracted. So like I said, at 20 knots above V2, we should have had our flaps retracted. But remember, I was telling you, it's definitely more difficult when you are trying to explain it as you go along. But I promise, as you guys are doing it, you just sort of get into a routine, right? Alright, everything else looks good. We can turn the pulse lights on that we're airborne. I'm going to put our map up on the display here. I'm going to zoom it down a bit. All right. So from here, we'll be holding tight until we get to about 10,000 feet. At 10,000 feet, we'll obviously increase speed. We're going to be increasing to 270 knots. You can do 290 knots if you want to do a really rapid climb. It is quite impressive, not going to lie. But we'll be doing 270 for our climb out speed once we reach 10,000. And then 18,000, obviously setting our altimeter. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward from here all the way up to cruise. So I'm going to increase our altitude here. We're getting close. Oh, there's 34,000 feet. Look at that though. Just empty out there. Now, what are you doing? Alright, so this is things where sometimes you just have goofy stuff happening. So you can see that we're definitely having an issue here. We're not tracking as we should. So what I would do here, if you ever run into these kind of situations, catch it quickly. We're just going to do the FOE, and we're going to do activate leg to waypoint. LE to FOE, and just hit OK. Okay? It just makes it easier. Rather than trying to figure out driving yourself crazy. I mean, we all know the sim has bugs. Everything's going to have its issues. I'm not quite sure why it did that. I'm really not. And then where Ellie came from, even then, I'm not 100% sure. Well, yes, I am, because Myth, we were jumping on an airway. So that was kind of odd behavior, but that's okay. So from here, we'll jump on to FOE. Once we reach FOE, it'll be just like we were flying the rest of our flight plan. But we are now turned to course. We're passing through 10,000 feet. Let's stick our heads up here and turn those landing lights off. And then I will see you guys again upon reaching 18,000 feet where we set our altimeter. And from there, it'll be a long, steady, smooth climb up to 18,000 feet. Now, the last thing we do need to do here is, as I mentioned, we're going to increase our speed to 270 knots. All right. Perfect. So I'll see you guys in just a few. All right, so we've cleared through 18,000 feet, so now it's just a matter of getting that barometer knob a tap, switching over to 2992. The next thing that we'll be doing is climbing all the way up to 41,000 feet, so we'll definitely be bringing our cruise altitude all the way up, or target altitude, excuse me. And when we reach about Mach 0.74 here, we will be coming up here and switching our speed just by giving it a click from indicated airspeed over to Mach. Okay, and then we'll be continuing our climb to about Mach 0.80, and then when we get to cruise altitude, we'll be looking for a cruising speed of about Mach 0.82. Now, sometimes you can hit it, sometimes you can't. It all depends on what the weather is doing and how the aircraft's going to be treating you that particular day. But if you find yourself overspeeding or reaching red line, then obviously you would bring that back just a hair. All right, and we'll take a look at that later as we get closer to that altitude. That will happen once you start approaching your cruise altitude is when you'll see that becoming an issue. Remember, the higher you go, the faster your quote-unquote true airspeed is. Okay? All right, guys, so I'll see you in a few. So So I want to take a quick minute, guys. We've come up to our cruise altitude here, but I wanted to show you guys another mistake unfortunately I had made. I thought I had hit it. It's bound to my HOTAS when we went to take off on the runway. There were actually two things that I missed. First, I didn't align our heading. I should have done that. I don't recall doing that. Maybe I did. It's possible that we've changed directions, but for some reason I'm thinking that I forgot to do that. So just in case, I want to remind everyone, when you line up with the runway, make sure you set your heading bug. Second thing I thought I had done, which was not armed, and I did not catch it until we were almost at cruise, was the flight level change. Okay, we had our manual speed set and we had the climb set, but I don't think flight level change was actually active. It just didn't seem to be doing what I was expecting it to do. So I went ahead and did switch us over into the Mach setting, and now we are at cruise. I am setting us up to Mach 0.82. So just keep that in mind. Mistakes happen. You're going to forget things. Keep those checklists up in front of you. Unfortunately, I got distracted by something going on in the house here, but that was my fault. So I want to make sure I always point those out to you guys. I don't like hiding the mistakes. That's how we learn. So anyway, we are at our cruise altitude. So from here, what I'm going to do now is configure our top of descent. So this makes it pretty easy. What we're going to do in order to configure the top of descent now that we're at our cruise, and I always wait to cruise to do this particular part, is we're going to come back here, we're going to find TNCM. We're going to take a look at the approach plate. The approach plate really is what's going to give us what we're looking for today, because we're not using the star. So we are expected to come in on runway 10. We're going to be using the RNAV approach. And Avaki is our first target here on the approach. So what I'm going to be looking for is 2,600 feet is what we're looking for at Avaki. So I'm going to come down, and we can look here, but I don't see any other restrictions up here. Yeah, Slugo even, we're supposed to be at 2,600. So we can go all the way back to Slugo. So let's do that. Let's use Slugo, and we're going to come down. Where are we? Trying to find the right views. I've created quite a few different views here, so you got to bear with me. So we're going to come down, and we're going to scroll through, and we're going to find Slugo. There it is. And we're going to click on the feet box here, and we're going to set 2,600 feet. That's our first target, not 26,000, 2,600. We're going to hit enter. Okay, now we could check to see if we had any other restrictions. You can see Slugo here, but everything else doesn't really seem to matter. So we're going to go to VNAV at this point. I'm going to hit VNAV enabled, and it's going to tell us our active VNAV waypoint is Slugo at 2,600 feet for a 3-degree descent angle, and we're going to be looking at a vertical target speed of 2,400 feet. Then what we should be able to find, now it's going to be a little hard to see because of how far out we are still. We're a ways away. But we're also going to be looking, you can see it right there, okay? Let me zoom in on this for you guys here a bit. Right here you can see our top of descent. That's TOD is what you're seeing there. So that's our top of descent point, letting us know at what point we need to begin our descent down into Princess Juliana. But other than that, we're just going to sit tight here. Now, here's what I was talking about watching for the overspeed. You can see the aircraft slowly accelerating, but we're going to want to be paying very close attention, because as our speed bug gets closer and closer to the red tape, we obviously don't want to overspeed the aircraft. So it's just something to keep an eye on. Shouldn't be a problem, but if it is, we'll just kick that that target speed down just a hair until we're in the clear. All right. All right, guys, so I will see you in a couple of hours here. We got quite a long flight ahead of us still, so I'll see you as we get closer to the top of descent. All right, folks, so we are approaching our top of descent. It's always good fun. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get this aircraft slowed down. We're going to slow her down to Mach 0.80 for now. We're going to wait till we actually reach that. Then we're going to go into vertical speed mode and start pointing that nose down. And we're going to align our descent target with this purple caret here, indicating where we want to be, or our descent indicator with the descent target. So it's going to be pretty extreme for a minute, but you'll see that it will slowly start coming up once we catch our glide slope. We're going to set our altitude down. That was my fault. That helps. A good place to start. For right now, I'm just going to crank it. There we go. And let's do that again. And as you get further and further away from your top of descent, the descent angle obviously, or the descent requirement will obviously increase, so keep that in mind. All right, so this is a very awesome system for this. It works out really, really nicely. And now we can set our altitude accordingly. So we're looking for right now about 1,000 feet, but we're gonna go to 2,600 is our initial target. So we're just gonna set that for now. And like I said, she descends just as fast as she climbs. So you're gonna want to pay very close attention. Right about between 35 and 28,000 feet, somewhere in that area, we're gonna want to switch back to indicated speed mode, as what will happen is the aircraft will start to overspeed. So you want to pay close attention to that. As we see that red tape getting closer and closer, we're going to have to bring our speed back into indicated airspeed, and we're going to start out at 290 and then slowly work our way down. But it happens pretty quick as we continue to climb, and honestly we're at 280 knots indicated. I think it's a fair bet we can go ahead and do that now. So let's switch it back, and we're going to set our initial speed at 290 knots. I'm not sure what happened, but we lost our VNAV information, so let's come back and find out what happened here. Oh, we passed Sluggo. Okay, so let's set our... Yeah, I guess we'll just let it keep rolling. Actually, we didn't pass Slugo. Slugo's right there. It's interesting. Why did we lose it? We're not even on that leg yet. It's a leg ahead. So we're going to keep managing this as is. I mean, we're still 80 miles out. We should have plenty of time to do so, but that is really odd that that happened. I just realized the flight plan is a leg ahead. Shouldn't be, but that's all right. Just continue to manage and do what we do. As long as we hit our altitude at Slugo, we should be fine. And remember, our goal is to make sure that by 10,000 feet we're at 250 knots. So that's really critical. All right, so I'll see you guys in a few minutes. We got a ways to go yet. All right, as we're passing through 24,000 feet, I'm going to start reducing our speed down to 270 knots. And that's just my preference given this particular flight. Make things a little bit easier. Here is I'm going to set up our approach procedure. So we're going to be using RNAV for runway 10. There's our Kabul transition, which I still think is weird because I feel like it's going to be a sort of round around the bend there. And the aircraft thinks we need to turn around now, which is really annoying. So let's go to flight plan. And again, let's activate leg to waypoint. Okay. There, now it's working right. That's weird. Hey, and we got our V speeds back. So odd. I don't know why it did that. And you can see we're descending a little fast according to this, so we're going to bring our target up to, or our V speed up. I guess it was in front, so the chart just, I guess, looked weird. Because this does show Kabul in front of Slugo, but when we were looking at the chart earlier, it looked like they were parallel to each other. But is what it is. The things we learn. Interesting approach. All right, so we got that set. Everything's looking good from here. And I just checked. The reason why we waited to enter in the actual approach is I wanted to verify that that was still the current approach that we needed to be using based on weather and all that. So according to the Googles, that is the approach in use right now according to the live weather. And we are below 18,000 feet, so it's time to set that barometric pressure with a nice tap of the B key. We're at 299.8. And as we get to about 12,000 feet or so, we're going to reduce our speed to 250 knots. All right, so passing through 12,000 feet. Again, I'm going to slow the aircraft down now to 250 knots. Let's adjust our descent rate a little bit. We're descending a little fast according to our target here. Still looking for that 2,600 feet. Below 10,000 feet. Let's get those landing lights turned back on. And now let's start also taking a look at our landing weights. So to do so, we're going to bring our sheet up. We're at 29,373. So 29,000. We're looking at approach speed of 128 knots and reference of 116. So we're going to come down to our speed bugs again. And approach speed we said was 128. And V speed of 115, or VREF. Let's turn those on. All right, got our approach speed set. On that, we're looking good. So I'll see you guys as we turn on to the approach. All right, real quick, something I wanted to show you guys. A question that came up in one of the for one of the guides that I have. Specifically, this one is somebody was asking about how to engage the thrust reverse. Obviously, we're going to need that on landing. So we're going to search by input. This is my Thrustmaster Warthog throttle configuration. If I search by input, I'm just going to tap this. This is what I use. Toggle throttle reverse thrust. So I tap this button, then I push the throttles forward, okay, and the engines will go into reverse. Then I'm going to pull the engines to idle, tap this button again, and that will disengage the reverse thrust. It's really important that if you use this particular method, that you do it in that order. Tap it from idle, throttles full forward. Once you slow down enough and you're happy with your speed, throttles back to idle, tap it again, and that way when you push the throttles forward, you regain forward momentum, okay? So, but this is how I use the reverse thrust. And again, it's just a tap it. There's a couple of different ways to do this. I believe there's a hold where you have to hold it as long as it's held down, but I didn't like that one. I like being able to just switch it on and off, makes it simple. But just remember that procedure. But I hope this answers you guys a question if you guys have any doubts on how to use reverse thrust. And I set this for all of my aircraft for this throttle set. Okay. All right. Anyway, let's get back to the flight. All right. So we're approaching our target altitude here. Let's see, the altitude's locking in. We're also getting pretty close to our approach. We're about 40 miles, give or take. So at this point, I'm going to make sure vertical speed is disengaged, and I'm going to activate the approach mode. Now, this is an RNAV approach, so we're not going to worry about glide slope indicators or localizers. We're using GPS to bring us in, which means we're going to have to pay very close attention to our glide slope indicator here for the glide slope. So we're just going to have to watch it and make sure that we're staying at the correct altitudes. It's not perfect. I'm going to hit B again and make sure that our altimeter is still correct, and you can see that changed. I typically do so below 18,000 feet, and then I'll typically do it again at about 10,000 or 8,000 feet. Did it a little late today. Sort of running behind all over the place. And at this point, I'm also going to begin, well, let's see here. Actually, I guess we got a ways yet. I won't slow the aircraft down any further just yet. All right, so yeah, I'm going to see you guys again when we get to Avaki. From here, we're just going to sort of sit tight for now. All right, so it dawned on me I said the wrong waypoint. I meant Gabul. So as we are making our turn towards the final heading here, now it's time to do some magic here. So first thing we need to do is we need to set our speed. We're going to slow this aircraft down to 210 knots. Now it's very important to remember that anything below 100 or 250 knots requires at least flaps 1. Okay, and then 230 knots, flaps 2. So we're watching it. There's 230, so let's go to flaps 2. And we'll be holding flaps 2 until we reach 180 knots. And you can see the GPS has locked on to the glide slope, so we're good there. Should be nice and smooth from here on in. All right, as we're getting ready to make our final turn around the bend here, we're going to start slowing us down once again to 180 knots. Once we reach 180 knots, we're going to go gear down full flaps. We're going to make sure our ground spoilers are armed. Good. There's 185 knots. So, landing gear coming down. Flaps going to full. Checked and verified. I'm going to slow the aircraft down to our approach speed here. So we're looking for 128 knots in the box today. And then remember, our reference speed will be 115 knots, so that should be just about our touchdown speed. Alrighty. About 2.5 miles out. We're fully configured. Go ahead and disengage the autopilot here. I'm going to slow our speed down to our reference speed. We're going to try to really scare the cows on this one. Disengage the auto throttle. Throttle's coming back to idle. All right. Reverses out. Throttle's to idle. Reversers turned off. Pulse lights off. Taxi light on. Landing lights off. Flaps retracted. Okay, and we'll taxi to parking and call it a day. I really hope you guys enjoyed this little video. I know I had a few mistakes in it, but you know, what's a good flight without a couple of mistakes? Hopefully you guys learned a couple of things to watch for and how to correct them if you do make the mistakes. That's kind of why I like leaving them in. Plus, honestly, as silly as it sounds, some of the mistakes make the flight more interesting and keep it from being too monotonous, so it's kind of fun. But as always, guys, be sure to leave those questions and comments down in the field below, and like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.